Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday live stream. I'm Valentina Vee. I'm a filmmaker in Los Angeles, and I am also an Adobe Max Master Trainer, which means I'm just a huge nerd and I talk about programs all the time. Today, we are going to be talking about how to use Adobe Audition for your podcast setup. Specifically, if you are like me, if you're a video editor or video creator and you're transitioning into podcasting, how you can do that easily and simply with Adobe Audition. I also want to let you know that I'm giving away a free year of Adobe Creative Cloud, which is like $50 a month. So it's a pretty good deal. And to do that, all you have to do is go to this website right here, adobe.ly/tips Tuesday. And not only will you be able to sign up for the giveaway, but you'll also have the full set of notes from this lesson, which means that you don't have to take any notes. I'll be going through Adobe Audition pretty fast. So for you, you can just sit back, look at the notes, and relax, basically, and enjoy. But before we get into the lesson, I have a very, very special guest with me. If you're familiar with Rocket Jump, Dimension 404 on Hulu, or of course the Dungeons and D's podcast, which I've been listening to, I want to bring in a good friend of mine, Freddie Wong.
Hello. Oh, I think we have it appears to be, at least on my end, the Navi filter from Avatar going on.
What are you talking
My
about?
skin looks blue, or is it just me? Maybe it's just on my end.
Did you lick a Smurf recently or something? I don't
Yeah,
know.
apparently. Hello.
Well,
How's it going?
good. I like how we have to pretend like we haven't been talking for 30 minutes
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
we have to start the stream. I feel like that's a very podcast thing to do as well, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing that the real podcast thing to do is to be like, no, no, hold on. So, don't say anything. Let's save it for the podcast. Let's save it for the we got to record because every word out of your mouth is solid podcast gold. So that's the
Well,
one I hear a lot before you start. It's like, no, don't talk about that. Yeah, we got to record it.
I feel like for regular podcasts, yeah, but does that happen for your Dungeons and Dragons podcasts? Because you're role playing the whole time, right?
That's true, but we're more loose improvisational sort of stuff. So the sort of preamble, the pre-record preamble, oftentimes will be like, no, wait, hold on, let's go, let's record quick. So yeah, you never know what you're gonna get when it comes to audio. But yeah, so mostly we're mostly playing D&D. So the idea of having to be quiet beforehand doesn't really come up because you got dice involved.
Yeah, so I've been listening to your podcast, and I
Oh yeah,
think that's the one thing that makes me a little bit confused is the whole dice thing, because this is why I'll
yeah,
tell you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because you are so good at improvising, it doesn't feel improvised. It feels like it's an actual, like a show that I'm listening to, like an audio show. And
Hmm.
then when you pause for the dice throwing, I'm like, "Oh, that's right. There's there's
So
stakes involved."
so generally, like the way we play D&D, which is not like very accurate to the actual rules. It's kind of a show version of D&D. A lot of the time when we get into just sort of the back and forth, it's pretty loose until the DM makes that, our DM Anthony makes a decision to be, okay, this is a point where we have to like throw a dice and sort of see what the random number generator throws at you. So I liken it to, it's 90, maybe 80% improv, and then 20% there's a random number generator who can throw things totally out of whack. So that's kind of the energy of the show. So people who aren't familiar with D&D definitely can get into it. All you need to know is that, like, sometimes we roll a dice to help aid the decisions, and 1 is very bad and 20 is very good in terms of how the thing we want to do happens. So yeah, so we try to make it as accessible to sort of everyone, so not just people who are really familiar with tabletop stuff and Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm not familiar with it at all, and I really enjoyed it. And I was wondering why you chose to do a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. I mean, I feel like they've been having a Dungeons and Dragons has been having like a renaissance, a
Yeah,
resurgence of sorts,
yeah.
right?
We're when it comes to the Dungeons and Dragons game, we are definitely late to it. Obviously, you have Critical Role, probably the seminal Dungeons and Dragons thing, and then on top of that, on the podcast side, you have the Adventure Zone, which the McElroys do, which is sort of the gold standard as far as like gameplay, actual play sort of podcast. And then there's a whole slew of other folks who've been doing stuff for years. So we were late to the game on that, and I think like all podcast ideas, it wasn't anything. We didn't set out to be like, oh, we gotta make a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. It was, the DM, our DM Anthony and I, we were driving around one day, and we were just, it was on Father's Day, so we were just randomly talking about, hey, isn't it weird how like father archetypes are fantasy archetypes, are Dungeons and Dragons archetypes, and we sort of just like, yeah, like a bard is like the dad with the cover band, or like the druid is like a hippie, and from that we're like, oh, that's funny, that I wonder if you could do a D&D thing from that, and that's the premise. And then from there it was, oh, maybe we can do this as a show, and as a podcast. So it wasn't, sort of the order of operations for us wasn't like, we gotta make a podcast, let's what's popular and let's kind of do it. It was, oh, we have an idea for a fun conceit that can work as a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. Oh, maybe we can do a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. And I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. I think that if you come into almost, I mean, I would say this applies to anything creative. This is even true with when we started on the YouTube channel a decade ago, right? If you start with, I want to make a thing, and it's got to be a podcast or it's got to be a YouTube series or whatever, and then you try and back the idea into it, it's always harder than if you just have
Mhm.
an idea for something that you think is really funny, or you think that's really interesting, or it engages you on that emotional level, and then thinking, oh, that could work as a show or whatever like that, and then you can shape that much easier. It's easier to start with that kind of raw material.
Yeah, I feel like if you are enjoying it, it shouldn't matter, who's watching it or what's happening.
Yeah,
If it's
and the
something that
side
fulfills you.
and the side effect, because I've tried as an adult to get Dungeons and Dragons games going, and anybody who's like who's not living with four roommates can attest, it is very difficult to get adults to show up once a week to play Dungeons and Dragons and roll dice. So, side effect, doing a podcast makes it seem more official, so that people are obligated to show up. So it turns out
So
that worked pretty
it's
well
just
too.
the excuse for hanging out with your friends and playing D&D.
Yeah, listen, it's harder to make friends as adults, and
I
you need as
get
many
you.
excuses as you can.
So on the technical side, how do you set up the audio for the game? Does everyone have their own separate mic? Is it like on a
Yeah,
farm? Like what's happening? Where does it all feed into? How do you record it?
yeah.
Is it
So
separate tracks?
So I've noted with some chagrin that a lot clearly every podcast audio like or pro audio manufacturer did some internal poll on podcasting, and their number they came to was four people at most on a podcast. So most
You have
podcasting
5 though.
devices, I know that's what kills me. So most podcasting devices will do four people. So the Rode. There's the Rode
NTG?
board. No, the Rode. There's the board.
Oh, the
uh,
switcher.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that one has four inputs. The Rodecaster Pro has four inputs. We use when we started, we were using the Zoom H6 and using the extra two input attachment, and we were just like, all right, look, one of the mics has got to be a dynamic mic. Four of them are condensers. One's going to be a dynamic because we don't have four phantom power outputs. So everybody has their own mic feed. It's a mix of microphones. So we have the sort of old radio broadcasting standby, the Shure SM7B. We also have three Procasters and also three broadcasters, Rode broadcasters, and then also Rode Procaster. So this are mixed around the room. I could say that I was like, yes, I tried to match the sonic profile of every single person's talking's voice to their microphone, but the truth of it is I can't hear a difference. So they're all basically about the same. And I think
I
you can
mean,
switch them around and I wouldn't be able to tell.
it sounds pretty good. Do you have any do you put any sweetening on it afterwards to
The,
level it out or
the
to make it sound like more bassy? Because it really does have a really good quality to it.
Yeah, and hopefully it gets better as I figure out how to use Audition as time goes on. The key with good sounding podcast audio is there's basically two scenarios, right? You have one or two people, which is probably the easiest because both of those feeds are nice, usually nice and separated. Having a little bit of crosstalk on each one isn't the end of the world. The microphones themselves, especially if you're doing a broadcast sort of mic, is designed to have good off-axis rejection to the other person. So as long as you're sort of facing each other and talking into them, that feed baseline is pretty good. As far as sweetening goes, we're doing pretty basic stuff. We're doing the probably the more complicated thing is we're using a gate expander to have to sort of quiet down sort of parts where people aren't talking. You probably won't have to do that if it's just one or two people. With five people, the problem is the crosstalk starts to amplify across all the microphones, so that having that crosstalk is a real source of and that room reverb is a real source of sort of audio quality in terms of signaling you to be like, oh, this isn't like a pro sounding thing. So for us, the key was using the gate leveler to kind of stamp that down. And then the basic sort of EQ curve where we cut somewhere in the sort of 1 to 2K range, depending on the person, but generally leave it pretty flat because these mics are pretty good as is. You don't really need to color them too much. And then a light compressor on it, and then just a multi-presser preset through Adobe Audition. That's basically it. And then the key to making it sound good, where you get from like 0 to like 90 right away, is editing it in such a way that you're losing the crosstalk, you're losing sort of off-axis sounds from your other
So
co-hosts.
when you say crosstalk, just so that people know, because I feel like a lot of people don't, what do you mean by that? That's when people talk over each other, right?
Yeah, so part of the
Exactly like this one. Exactly
yeah,
when they're talking.
yeah, so part of the thing when it comes to podcasts is, something to keep in mind is everyone treats it like, oh yeah, it's easy. I set up two mics and it's just a conversation between two people. Conversation between two people sucks. People are talking over each other. There's uhs and ums everywhere. Like, it's fine when you're there, but when you're listening to it as a third party, you can clean it up. And so a lot of that sort of process in audition for me is cleaning up, uhs and ums, but then also finding parts where if two people are talking over each other, sometimes shifting the timing so that you can hear one person and then the other person, ducking someone if they're laughing so that the other person can go over sort of that. It's sort of that sort of light conversational mixing to make it as smooth of a listening experience as possible. Now, right now, we are all recording separately in our own environment. So we all record to either computers or external recorders, and then I compile all the sort of WAV files separately. What's nice about that is everyone's feed there's a sort of a pro and con for that. Everyone's feed's totally clean, so now you can really get in and clean up the way people, sort of, if there's stumbles or if there's repetition, you can really clean that up. The downside is everyone being separate is now there's a little more editing in terms of timing to make sure that laughs seem to come in at a natural point, just because you're dealing with the built-in latency of the fact that everyone's miles away from each other.
Yeah, do you ever, because of that latency, you know the point at which it lines up, but then you kind of just shift it like 2 or 3 frames over, like the
Yeah,
entire thing, just so that that latency is accounted for?
yeah, you don't necessarily have to. One of the things that is nice, so we experiment with a couple of sync methods with our podcast Story Break and this podcast before we settled on one that seemed to work the best. If you go off of everyone clapping and trying to record that on somewhere, it gets a little bit difficult because you're dealing with the latency there. So what we found was the best way to get it really close, almost to the point where you don't have to really touch it, for the most part, is to use a cloud-based stopwatch. So we use
Mm.
uh, there's a few out there. What is the one that we use? I'm blanking on the name. Uh, but basically the idea is that it's a stopwatch that everybody able to chronograph. We use chronograph.io, so
Okay.
everybody will log into this link and they'll see the same timing, plus or minus a couple milliseconds or a few tenths of a second. So they'll be able to see that same link, and then we call for a
Oh, hold
clap.
on. I
Uh,
think we lost
oh no,
your
my
video.
feed could
One
be.
sec.
Could be. I'm still seeing it.
Yeah, but we lost it
Ah, there
on.
it is. Um,
Hold on, hold on. There we're back.
yeah.
Yep, we're good.
So
Okay.
yeah.
So you
So
were saying you use chronograph to sync your audio across when people
yeah,
are
yeah,
recording remotely, so that there's a digital timer, kind
yeah.
of like
So we
Greenwich Mean Time or something that
yeah,
everyone like.
basically. But we all,
Yeah.
we all clap at a certain time, right? Like, so at a 15-second mark, everyone claps and does their best, and we do it like maybe 2 times just so that you kind of average, you can kind of visually average those two claps
Okay.
out.
Nice.
That gets everything pretty close in a remote record setup. And obviously, with 5 people, it's more complicated. With 2 people or 3 people, it's sort of it's easier to line that up.
Right. Well, I wish I could talk to you forever about this because I have a lot of questions, but we are out of time. So I would like to thank you very much for
Yeah,
joining me,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
for
absolutely.
chatting. If people want to check out Dungeons and Daddies, where can they do that?
That's going to be our website, dungeonsanddaddies.com. You can also search for it. I'd search for it on the podcasting app. Luckily, when we first started out, we had to tell people to only search on the podcasting app or whatever podcast sort of host you use, because if you search Dungeons and Daddies on Google, you got a lot of different search results that are not podcasts and Dungeons and Dragons related, surprisingly. So
Hmm.
now we're good. We're on Google. We beat that SEO. People know our show, thankfully. So and you can follow us on Twitter at Dungeons and Dads.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for having
And
me.
Bye. All right. So thank you, Freddie, for being here. I just want to remind you that I'm about to start a 45-ish minute lesson on Adobe Audition. And if you want all the notes for the lesson, you can go over here to adobe.ly/tips Tuesday. And that will give you is a 9-page workbook that I created. And for the lesson, I'm basically going down the workbook and I'm showing you exactly what I do, exactly what I use to help you edit a podcast. And also on this page, you will get a replay of this stream, as well as all of my other streams and all of my other workbooks. And you will be entered to win a full year of Creative Cloud. In fact, I have the name of our winner from last time. It is Megan Chase. Congratulations, Megan Chase. Hold on one sec. Am I, by the way, let me know in the chat room if I'm out of sync. I'm doing my best, but I may be out of sync. If I am, that's not a problem because you're not going to be seeing my face for much longer. We're going to be going into Adobe Audition. All right. So let's go over into Adobe Audition. Hopefully you can still hear me. And now maybe you can see me here in the bottom right corner. Please let me know. I'm out of sync. Oh, bummer. Right when I try so hard. Okay. Well, I think unfortunately I'll just have to be a little bit out of sync for this stream, but I'm gonna make it better for the next stream. So, all right. So here I am in Adobe Audition and say that I want to, me and my podcast guest. We want to record our podcast on in different places, right? So we gather together in something like a Zoom chat or a Skype or whatever, so we could see each other. And then we each have our microphone and we each want to record something. So we'll go over into File, New Audio File, and we'll name it. So I'll call it Valentina's Side, Getting to Know You podcast 1, right? Something like that. And it opens up a new audio track here. Now we want to make sure that our preferences, our hardware preferences are set so that it recognizes our external um, our external recorder or external microphone if it has one and that it plays correctly in your earphones. So you can go ahead and do that here. One sec. Let me open up my pointer. Oh, maybe it was already open. One sec. There we go. Mm-mm-mm. Do, 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 do. There we go. Yeah, you can do that right there. There she is. She's back. And you can set it to, whatever your output and input is. And this is very important because otherwise you may not be able to hear it and you may not be able to get the cleanest sound. So I'm just going to say that, yes, this is the microphone that I want, and I want this to be going into my earphones. Okay. And then I could just go ahead and press the record button, which is down here at the bottom, and I can start talking. Hello, so I am recording my podcast. This is going to be where we do our sync clap. So hopefully that sync clap can be heard in the headphones or in the audio of the other person that is streaming along with you, or they'll do a sync clap along with you at the same time where they count 3, 2, 1, and then you both clap at the same time. And that way you can get that nice spike in the waveform so that later you can adjust it. So that's how you record in Audition. It is really, really easy, but I recommend having a backup recording just in case something fails. Maybe their mic fails, your mic fails, you later discover a weird tick or something like that. So I use eCaster or on WeCaster, and this is the website. So you just go to create a new recording, Getting to Know You podcasts, Valentina, create recording, and what it does is it loads up a little window. It asks you to allow to use your microphone and all of that. And then it has this invite link here. So this is kind of what I would recommend maybe for Freddie or anyone who is trying to line up their audio recordings. is you go ahead and you send that link to your guest. And once you send that link to your guest, their name will pop up here, and then you can just press start recording, and it will record what is called a double ender, which means that it will record two tracks, one for you, one for your guest, that are already synced up. So for my test podcast here, I did both. I did both a double ender, and I recorded on my side and my guest recorded on his side. So let me show you what that looks like. Let me get rid of this one. Save changes. Nope, because I already did it. So here I have my folders, and in one folder right here, voiceover for podcast. Oh, wait a sec. So this is my track, and Steve's track. One sec. I don't have one of the files in here, but I do have it elsewhere. Let me just quickly grab it because I don't seem to. I think I copied it. Okay, let me paste. Give it a sec. I'm gonna delete that because that's an audition file. So here in this is what the on WeCaster gives you. It gives you two files and they're already split. So Valentina and Steve. That is what the website gave me. But I also recorded Valentina and Steve, right? So we also recorded that separately. So I'm gonna bring all of that in. I'm going to rename this Steve side. So these are the ones that we recorded separately. And I'm just going to drag them in. And then these are the ones that were recorded through the online syncing software. So I'm just going to drag those in as well. So everything's here. I have 4 tracks here in my window, in my file window. Does everything make sense so far? Divino, Barbosa. Sí, yo puedo hablar en español, pero nadie más, nadie va a entender. Okay. So once you've recorded your primary and backup files, what I like to do is I like to go through and do any noise reduction. So for example, these are like, ideally, these are the main files that you'll be working with, which are, the files that have been recorded. The files that have been recorded from your primary recorder, and these are your backup files, right? So I'm going to go into, for example, Steve's side over here, open it up by double clicking. Here is our entire waveform, and I'm just going to go to noise reduction. So I'm going to select all by going to Command A, then going to Effects, Noise Reduction Restoration, and Denoise. And that is going to give me the ability to get rid of the noise in the entire thing. Like say that it's a refrigerator humming in the background, or there's like a really squeaky truck outside or something like that. So you can go ahead and choose your processing focus. So you can focus on low frequencies, mid frequencies, low and high frequencies, whatever you want. So I'm just going to focus on low frequencies for this. And then this slider is the amount of noise reduction that you want. So you can go ahead and place your playhead, which is this red line, anywhere that you want to double check something. Say I want to double check something there. I can press my space bar to listen through to it.
You're going to
So you can see the noise reduction is a little bit advanced. If you can't hear it, let me increase the volume here so that you can hear it a little bit better. Give me one sec. There we go. That's way too much noise reduction, right? Maybe a little bit less. Oh, hold on. I got output noise only selected. So now you should hear
You're going to
There we go.
The
So you listen through to it by pressing
like
the space
actual auction market.
And you can click this button to check the effect. This toggles the effect on and off, so you can actually see what it's doing to your audio.
Tsukiji Fish Market is like, when we went, it was like that.
Luckily, Steve is a professional podcast producer, so he had excellent an excellent microphone, so his noise was just fine. There's not much noise reduction to be done. Here we also have output noise only, so if you select that, you can hear just the noise that you're about to take out. And if you select output noise only, you can listen and hear if any of the actual audio is coming through, like any of the actual talking. And here, none of the actual talking is coming through, so I did a good job, and I'm gonna press apply, right? And that's gonna apply the denoise filter throughout the entire thing. Now, say that you have some unwanted noise. So I'm gonna go into this right here. So this is my track. And right around, well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open spectral frequency display. So right now you can see the audio is a waveform, right? But you can also open it up to see even more details about it by going into view and then going to show spectral frequency display up here under view. And that opens this up, which is something called the spectral frequency display, but I call it the heat map. And it just gives you more information about the track. And now you can like really refine it and see the details in it and see what's happening in the track itself. For example, I don't know if you can tell, let me zoom in here, but there is this very faint line of high frequency noise. Do you see that? It's like right here. And it is cutting through a lot of the track. Hopefully you can see that. And you can see it's just going through all the way here. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of just that tiny frequency and leave everything else just fine. So one thing that I can do is draw a marquee selection box. So I'll go up here to the marquee selection tool right there, and I'll choose the box. And I'll go through, and I think it starts right over here, and I'll just draw a box, a very thin box around everywhere where that frequency is. And I think it stops like right around here. So I'll just draw that frequency, select that frequency, and I'll delete it. And there we go. That doesn't affect the actual vocals.
Oh, wait, hold on. How about I try to say on 3? I try to say what I think your favorite holiday is.
Right, but it cuts out that high frequency noise. So again, if you have some kind of annoying sound in the background, that's how you can cut it out. Another way that you can cut out very specific sounds is by healing them out. So for example, around 5:45, let's zoom into here on the track. Hopefully it's this track. Do.
Oh yeah, it is doing. So yeah,
Is it this track or is it this one? No, I think it might be this one.
something.
There's a squeaky door. Yeah, you can hear it here.
Something.
You hear that?
Something.
That squeaky door? Hold on 1 second. All right. So I don't know why my light is doing that. Hello. All right. So you can go ahead and just use your time selection tool here, your time selection tool, to select that area of noise, and you can go to favorites, auto heal, and you can heal it so that squeaky door is no longer there. Cool, right?
Something.
If you want it to be even more precise though, you can go over here to your spot healing brush tool, select that, and you can paint out the noise. You can use the bracket keys, bracket bigger, bracket smaller, to paint out that noise. So it sounds like this.
Something.
pretty great. Another thing that you can do, for example, here at 4:52, right there, listen to that.
Right.
No, not that one. 4:52. I guess it's not here anymore. Maybe I cloned it out. 15:51. I have notes here, so that's why I know where I'm going. Okay, right here. See that? Hear that thud? I hit the desk, right? I'm in the middle of laughing and I hit the desk. That thud is not nice. And then I keep going. And then my desk is shaking, so along with my laughing, you can also hear like a little back and forth, like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So that hit on the desk is right here. You can see it visually. You can see it right there. And then that desk shaking noise is right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So just listen to it really quickly one more time before I heal it so you can hear the difference. So this is that thud and this is that shaking noise. So I'll go over again to my healing brush and I'll make the brush smaller so that it's a little bit more specific. And I'll go ahead and I'll heal it out. And I'll heal it out again. I'll heal it again. I'll heal it again. So you can heal it multiple times and then you can listen through to it. There's no more thud, right? The same thing with the little desk shaking noise. So you can go ahead and use the healing brush and the desk shaking noise is right here. So I'm going to just make the brush a little bit bigger and just run it through along the bottom. And now when I play it, there is none of that shaking. Pretty cool, right? All right. So again, if you want to get access to all of this information, I'm just following my notes, the guideline that I made earlier. That guideline is here at Tips Tuesday. And apologies that my voice isn't 100% synced right now. I don't know why, but I will figure out a way to fix it for sure for next time. Unless I can fix it right now? Really quickly? Unless there's a setting for that? Probably not. All right, let's just keep going with this. Again, it's adobe.ly/tipstuesday. So now we're going to sync our tracks. So we're going to go and create a new multi-track editor, right? Because right now we are in a single track kind of mode. This is the waveform editor. We are going to go into multi-track, and you can go into multi-track right up here, view multi-track editor. And we're going to click on that. And it's going to ask us, okay, create a new multi-track session. Where do you want to put it? What do you want to call it? So I'm just going to go to browse. I'm going to go to where I'm keeping all of my stuff. So that's, let's see, Adobe Streams, Stream 3, Getting to Know You Podcast, and I'm going to call it Getting to Know You Podcast Episode 1. Select folder, Episode 1, Podcast. Okay, great. So now I have all of these tracks. You can see the track 1, track 2, track 3, etc., etc., etc. And what I want to do is make sure that I sync up my podcast. So I'm going to bring over all 4. So I'm going to select all 4 of my tracks, the 2 tracks that I recorded separately with my guest, and then the 2 tracks that I recorded using the eCaster. And I'm going to bring them in. But if I bring them in just regularly, drag them in, they all go on one track. So I'm going to hold down Alt. And by holding down Alt, they kind of separate into different tracks, which is pretty handy. So I can also, it's just going to take a second to do here. Another thing I can do is I can go ahead and recolor them. if I want. So I'm going to keep this one, the top one, green. I'm going to do the next one. Where am I? Oh, wait. Track color right there. So I'm going to do it purple. So all I'm doing is I'm clicking right here on the track color. Then this one I'm going to do yellow, just to keep them organized for you. And then this one I'm going to do blue. Let's do that. Okay. So these two, track 3 and 4, are lined up. And I can actually rename the tracks. So I'm going to do the Steve, Mike, V Mike, Steve online, V online. And you can actually zoom out and see all of the tracks together if you go over here to this button right here. This button right here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on it. So those are all my tracks. And check it out. The Steve side and the Valentina side. Actually, these are, this is right. This should be here. This should be here. And then, yeah. So these two right here are the ones that are from the internet, and these two are recorded separately. Now, if I mute the ones that are recorded separately for a second, and I just listen to the ones that are recorded from the internet, they're already synced up. Oh, my metronome is on.
So what you're saying is you can teleport tiny little bits,
Yes.
like 1 inch forward.
Yeah.
All right. So they're recorded separately. So what I can do now, even if I didn't have the clap sync, is I can go ahead and I can mute the Valentina ones for a sec. And I could do Steve, right? And I can go ahead and look, okay, where does it look like it lines up? Kind of, let me see if I can find where this is lining up. Let me look at the waveform. Let me hear what he's saying. And I can go ahead and line it up perfectly so that it aligns with what Steve's audio is. And then I can go ahead and mute that and then unmute the Valentina side and this one and align that. And once they're done aligning, I can go ahead and just delete the reference ones from the internet. And I'm left with the lined up versions of my original clips. But I already did that for you guys. So I'm just going to open up that file right now. So here they are, synced up together.
So I'm glad that you carved out some time.
Oh, of course.
So today, okay, oh, this is a big one. So
Gamebox says it would be great if I could download these original files and play with them later. I wish you could, but I did not ask Steve permission to have these available for people. So just follow along, and you can always download this tutorial later and play around with it. Okay, so I have now these two files. They're all synced up. The next thing I want to do is I want to delete all of the silences, right? Because there's times when neither Steve and I are talking, and you just want to make sure that the silences are just all cut out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and shorten that longer clip. And I always make sure that I have my snapping on, which is this magnet icon right here. So I'm going to just shorten that, delete this gap, delete this gap. So now they're just at the beginning.
I'm rolling on my task cam. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
hey, Steve. Hold on. Okay.
Maybe.
Well,
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to create what is called a polywave, and I really want to thank Mike Russell at Music Video Creative for this workflow, because this is a really cool way that you can get rid of silences, and it doesn't matter how many tracks you have. You can have 5 tracks. I think you can have up to 32 tracks in a poly wave. So we're just going to go into File, New, Audio File. And we're going to, instead of the stereo or mono, we're going to go to custom. We're going to create a custom file here. So I already have one that's called Two Speakers Podcast. So this is for 2 speakers, but you can always add more speakers by pressing the plus button. So you can add channels and you can add speakers, but we're not going to do that because we only have 2 speakers, but just so you know, and then you can save it as a preset so you can use it later. So somebody like Freddie who has 5 speakers can always use it later. So I'm going to say, okay. And I'm going to name it, you know, the 2 speaker polywave or something like that. So now we have here 2 tracks. We have track number 1 here and track number 2 here. And we can go ahead and before we drag our tracks into here, what we'll do is go back into where we just were in the multitrack editor, and we want to, one sec. We want to trim them right where they are. So we're going to convert them to unique copies. So we're just going to command and right click and convert to unique copy. So that unique copy is now right here. So it basically created a new file that's trimmed to the length of this file that we trimmed. So we're just going to call it Steveside trimmed. We're going to go to my, and we're going to go to convert to unique copy. And it should pop up on this side over here. If you can't find it, you can always right click on it and go to reveal clips in files panel. So it's right here. And I'm going to call it Valentina side trimmed. So I'm going to go into that polywave that we just created, which is the 2 speaker polywave right here. And I'm going to drag in the Valentina side trimmed. Oh, sorry. Undo. Hold on. Let's go to the polywave again. So you can drag them in, but you have to disable or enable the tracks right here. So I'm going to copy paste them in. So I'm going to disable track 2 or channel 2, I should say. I'm going to go to Valentina side trimmed. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go into the polywave, paste it. Let me do it again. Why am I having technical difficulties all of a sudden? One sec. You can, let me just check that everything's working. Go back again. Go to reveal file and clips. Reveal file and clips panel, Steve side trimmed. Go into my polywave. Ooh, go into my polywave, move Steve side trimmed in here. Nope, that just opens up Steve side trimmed. I'm going to select it all, copy, go to my polywave, paste. Then deselect that first channel, select the second channel, there we go. Then go find Valentina side trimmed, select it all by going to Command A, Command C for copy, right? Then we go into 2 speaker polywave and we paste it into there. And now we enable both of them. So now we have a polywave with both tracks.
All of a sudden, they're cool. I, understandably, am pissed.
Okay, so here's my question that'll probably dissolve your point.
So now they're all lined up, they're on different waves, and I can do what's called cut out all of the silences. So I'm going to go to Window, Diagnostics. So I'm going to open up my diagnostics window, which is right here. The effect is delete silence. And the preset, I'm just going to say default, right? And then I'm going to scan. So this scans the entire poly wave, and it finds all of the silences. So this saves you hours of work because now you can cut out all of the parts where neither of you are speaking, and you can make sure that it's still all synced up at the end. So I'm going to just say delete all. It's frozen, but that's fine because I've already done this. So I can just go ahead and open back up if it freezes. By the way, again, I would like to say that if you want the full tutorial along with a lesson of how I did this, you can go ahead and go to adobe.ly/tipstuesday and you can see it there. If you have any questions, also leave them in the chat. Quintessential Studio says this is such an awesome demonstration. Thank you. I'm really glad you're liking it. I do want to say that again, like if you go into the link, the Tips Tuesday link, you'll be able to see this, which is literally the exact thing that I'm talking about, step by step. You can download this guide. So if you missed something or if I'm going too fast, you can always go back and see what I'm doing, which is pretty awesome. All right, let's go back into Adobe Audition and see what's happening with our polywave. So let me open it back up. So basically, once you create your polywave, give me a sec. All right, so one more time, just real quick. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna go to select the gap, ripple delete gap, select the gap, ripple delete gap. Go to each one of these, do convert to unique copy. That one also convert to unique copy. Cool. Then we have our file, new audio file. We're going to make it a 2-speaker podcast. We're going to call this polywave. Okay. We're going to disable the second one. Then we're going to go back to where we just were. So that's syncing. We're going to right click, go to reveal in clips right here. So Steve's side, select all, copy, take it to the polywave, paste it, then deselect the track. So de-enable it. Now enable this one instead. We're going to go back to our multi-track. We're going to select the second one. We are going to go to reveal clip and files panel. There it is. Double click it, select it all, copy, go to the polywave, paste it there, enable everything. Then we're going to go to the diagnostics panel, delete silences. We're going to scan. Great. Then we're going to delete all. And oh my goodness. Give me a sec. So let's say that we did delete all of them, and now basically what happens is that the polywave becomes 2 shorter clips. What will happen is then we can open up a new multi-track session and we can drag each of those channels from the polywave back into the multi-track session so that now we have 2 multi-track files and both of them are trimmed and both of them have silences cut out. I think you benefited a little bit from me showing you that workaround twice. But basically, all right, so here we are in the polywave. So here we are back in the polywave. Let's say that I've trimmed them, right? So we can go to File, New, Multi-Track Session, and we're going to call this Trimmed Polywave. Okay. So here we go. Turn off that metronome. And then we can go into the polywave. You can see that when you click this, is this so huge? We go. When you click this button next to the polywave, the drop down button, you can see the two tracks, mono and mono. So you can select both of them and then drag them into your new multi-track session and then hold down Alter option to put them into the two different tracks. So now you can control them independently and they're both trimmed and all of the silences are completely cut out. So instead of waiting for that to happen, I actually already did it. So here they are. So this is the trimmed one. All the silences are cut out. The original podcast was over 40 minutes, and now we have somewhere around 30 minutes to deal with, which is pretty great and saves you a lot of time. So the next thing we're going to do is obviously, you want to put effects. Let's listen to it for a sec.
Or something like that.
No, I'm trying to find like
Miss Drag Race.
funny ones.
Okay.
All right, so now what you can do is, let me make sure that, let me clear these audio types for right now. So now I have these two, they sound like this. Obviously mine is a lot louder than Steve's.
Excessive
Crossbody
bracelets.
fanny packs.
Crossbody fanny packs. Really?
Did you say excessive bracelets?
Yes.
What is excessive in your estimation?
Here. I have a perfect example every time. It would be
So let's sweeten this, which means let's make the audio sound better and just be nicer and work for us for our podcast better. So we're going to select both of them by dragging a marquee box around, and then we're going to open the Essential Sound panel. If it's not already open for you, you can just go into Window, Essential Sound, and you can open it. So we're going to drag a marquee box and designate them as dialogue. And then it has a really awesome preset here, preset menu. So let's go into that preset menu. My zoom tool needs readjusting. So we're going to select them both, go into that preset menu, and select podcast voice. So it automatically already does the perfect settings for a podcast voice. So it also evens out the loudness and matches the loudness between us. So now take a look at the loudness here.
Oh, I fully agree.
yeah.
Oh.
That's so many bracelets.
But it's not just bracelets.
So you can go in and you can adjust things as well. Like for example, in each of these categories, you can enable them and disable them by using the checkbox to make sure that whatever you're working on is the thing that's actually affecting the audio. So let's work on Steve's audio first. I'm going to mute mine by going to the mute button right here. So I'm going to just mute it. And I'm just going to go on Steve's audio. So I'm going to mute mine. This is Steve's down here.
It's
Let me go to a section where he's talking.
and like believed it. Like for the longest time that I was just like,
if I want to keep listening to just one piece of audio over and over and over again and keep adding effects or taking off effects, I can select that piece using the time selection tool. So let's select this one, for example.
I never bought like the Anthony Bourdain's or the
That'll be good. And then I'll just go down here and I'll loop it, right? So it just keeps looping. So whenever I add effects to it, I'll just listen to it looped. So I'll just loop it.
I never bought like the Anthony Bourdain's or the I never bought like the Anthony Bourdain.
So now I can test, okay, maybe clarity is what is causing that reverb that I don't want. So let me uncheck the clarity checkbox, which is right here. And now let's check it.
Bourdain's.
Oh, let me do that again.
Like I never bought like the Anthony Bourdain's or the
Cool. So it check the clarity.
like I never bought like the
No, it wasn't the clarity. Maybe it was this one.
Anthony Bourdain's or the like I never bought like the Anthony Bourdain.
Okay, so it was definitely in the repair that was adding some sort of reverb. So let me take off DS and reduce noise. Let's
Or
see.
the like I never bought like
Okay, so there we go. So I just sweetened up and did a little bit of adjustments to his voice. You can even do enhanced speech here and for male, right? So I sweetened up his. Let me unmute mine, mute his, and let me check mine. let me go to a section that where I'm just talking, maybe this section right here. I'll loop it.
You lived in Stars Hollow in Gilmore Girls, which I've always wanted to live in Stars.
Okay, so first of all, I'll enhance speech for female because I'm a female. I'll go to repair, and I'll do reduce noise a little bit. Actually, I won't do reduce noise because we already reduced it. I'll reduce rumble. Loudness I won't touch. Creative I won't touch. And then EQ, yeah, podcast voice.
Stars Hollow. You lived in Stars Hollow in Gilmore Girls, which I've always wanted to live in Stars Hollow. You lived in Stars Hollow in Gilmore Girls, which I've always wanted to live in Stars Hollow. You lived in Stars Hollow in Gilmore Girls, which I've always wanted to.
So now I've very easily just adjusted a bunch of the settings in the essential sound panel. So now I have both of these and they both sound amazing and the levels are leveled
Did
up.
you wear fanny packs because you thought it was cool?
No, I wore fanny packs because I needed to have both of my hands free.
Okay, cool. So now you're like, okay, now it's time to edit, right? Now it's time, now that we have it all trimmed and all lined up, let's edit this thing. Well, let's do it. We have a minute. So let's do it. The first thing, again, if we don't get to everything, don't worry about it. The first thing we're going to do is listen to these clips a little bit faster. So we are going to select them, make sure that we have global clip stretching toggled on, which is right here. So we're going to, oh gosh, hold on. We're going to select them using the selection tool. And then we're going to go up to the top here, and there is a little white triangle at the top where you can stretch the clip from. So we're going to go to that white triangle and we're going to stretch both clips until the indicator shows us 50%. That way we can listen back to the footage or to the audio at a lot faster rate and we can get through it faster. This will save you a lot of time when you're editing. And then we can use keyboard shortcuts to cut and trim and delete. So I have it all kind of saved, and you can look at again, you can look at this adobe.ly/tipstuesday for all of what the shortcuts are, but you can go ahead and just listen through.
My task cam. 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Hey, Steve. Hold on.
Hey, V. Okay. Wait, what's that?
Or let me just say V.
V. Okay.
Yeah.
So I pause it there. I can insert a cut there. I can select these two. I can delete them. I can select an area itself, like this, for example. I can isolate that, and I could place cuts around it, and I can delete it by all of this I'm doing is in the workbook, and it's just you just use shortcuts. And I wish I could have more time to show you what these shortcuts are and everything like that. But just go into the workbook and you'll see it. So you can either select an area and cut on both sides of it. You can select an area and ripple delete the entire area with certain shortcuts like that. You can select, like, say I want to have a fade right here in this cut. So there's a shortcut that will allow you to select everything after that cut, and then you can just move it forward and that'll create a little fade. You can see that little fade happening with the yellow cross hatch there. So yeah, there's a lot of great things that you can do in Audition. Obviously, I wish I had more time to show you everything, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Again, go to this link, download the full entire workbook that I worked really hard to make, because that is going to be your saving grace over here, and it has all of the shortcuts. Next week, I am going to be back, and hopefully you'll be back too, and hopefully the audio won't be a few seconds off. I'm doing my best, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.